Hey everyone, welcome to the next video in this Blender beginners tutorial series where we model this isometric scene in Blender. So if you haven't watched the previous video, make sure to check that out. I'll link it in the description. Now let's continue where we left off in the last video. Okay guys, let's model one final thing. Let's model a simple storage box to fill up that empty space beside that couch. So again, I'm going to use this wooden drawer for that. Press Shift D to create a duplicate, press X to move it in the X-axis like this. Let's squeeze it in the Z-axis and rotate this in the Z-axis for about 90 degrees. I think that's a good proportion maybe. Now press Ctrl A and let's apply scale. Tab into edit mode, let's add a loop cut, slide it over here. Let's switch to face mode by pressing 3. Hold your Alt key and click over here to select this face loop and hold your shift and select this top face. Now press Y. So this will make this into a separate mesh, geometry, without actually making into an individual mesh. So you can see, let's turn off the proportionality thing. You can see. Now press Alt E and choose extrude faces along normals to create the lid for this box, and press Ctrl plus on your numpad and slightly move it down. So that's a really nice and quick way to create a box, and there is something to hold the box, a simple hole over here. So we can use a boolean operation to create the hole. So let's start by bringing in a cylinder. I think 32 is really great for a really nice boolean cutter. Now move it over here. Tab into edit mode, 1 for vertex mode. I'm going to press Alt Z to enter the X-ray mode. I'm going to select this middle vertices like this. So basically it's edge right now, and press Ctrl B and slightly bevel this like this. Okay. Now I'm going to grab one side of this cylinder and press G and X to move it like this. So this will be our boolean cutter. Now select everything, press S to scale it down, except in the Z axis. So I'm going to use Shift Z to scale this. Now rotate this in the X axis for about 90 degrees and rotate this again in the Z axis for about 90 degrees. Now let's scale this down so that we can fit this inside this box. So about there seems great. Now let's press G and X to move this in the X-axis. Let's scale it a little bit more so that it comes out this side. Okay, that's great. Now let's set the origin to geometry and hold your shift and click this box. Now press Ctrl Shift and B and let's choose difference from brush booleans. So this will create a really nice hole. So right now you see this isn't actually happening like we expect it to, and that's because the box is kinda one-sided, single-sided, and that's why it's happening like this. So let's quickly go into the edit mode. Let's that is a very simple way to select independent mesh, and that is, let's quickly deselect everything by pressing Alt A. Now if you want to select any kind of independent mesh, you can hover your mouse over any vertex if you are in the vertex mode, or if you are in the edge mode, hover over your edge or face. So right now I'm in the vertex mode. Hover your mouse over this vertex and press L. This will nicely select any of this independent mesh. So I'm going to press Alt E and choose extrude faces along normals. I'm going to drag my mouse out a little bit, just a little. So now that we have added a bit of thickness to our box, it would have fixed that issue pretty nicely. So press Tab to enter the object mode. Now you can see our box has a little bit of thickness and our boolean operation is successful. Now let's select this boolean cutter and select our box and press Ctrl P and choose object, so that the boolean cutter will also travel along with our box. Now let's select everything and set origin to the geometry. Now let's move this box over here. So make sure that you are in the using the median point for rotation. So plus R and 90 to rotate it, something like this. And I'm going to place it right here. Okay, that looks great. Maybe if you want, you can press Alt D to create a linked duplicate and stack another one above this box and scale it down a little bit. So now that we have completed our modeling, it's time to assign some materials, to throw in some colors and see how we can make it a bit more interesting. So I'll be displaying an image on the screen right now. So please take a screenshot of this image, and we will be using that image as a color palette reference to add materials to our scene. So once you have taken that screenshot, we will be bringing that image into Blender, so we can use it as a reference color palette. Bring your mouse cursor over here down. You can see the mouse cursor changes into a plus icon, and click and drag your mouse above to create a new window like this. So you can adjust any window like this, or if you don't want any of this window, you can click and click join areas and move your cursor towards the side that you want to merge, and this will get rid of that window. So we don't actually use that timeline, so we can get rid of that. Click this editor type icon and let's change this to image editor. So you can click this open icon over here and locate your files and bring that image into the Blender. So as of now, we are working inside the solid preview. So let's change our viewport to material preview. If you go to this panel over here, and you can see viewport shading, this is material preview mode, this icon, and you can click that to enter the material preview mode. So right now everything is pretty white, and which is the default material. So we can start by applying materials from now on. So I'm going to choose a less reflective HDRI. So by default, there are some HDRIs built into this Blender software, and I have installed this one. I feel like this one is pretty easy on my eyes. So you can keep this anything you want. It doesn't actually affect our final scene. So this is just for the preview. So we will be adding a HDRI from Polyhaven, and I'll show you how to add a HDRI in a while. So right now let's stick with this. So let's start with the sofa. Let's select the sofa, and let's, if you come to this material properties, this red icon, and you click this new button, and let's call this sofa. Maybe we can crunch this outliner a bit more so that we can work a bit more freely. Now if you click the base color over here, it will bring up this color wheel, and you can pick the eyedropper and choose the color from here. So this will nicely apply the material, and let's keep the roughness a little bit high. Maybe we can set it somewhere around 0.7 point something. And if you come down to the subsurface, let's increase the weight a little bit. So this is just for any kind of materials that light penetrates inside that material, So that kind of material we can use a subsurface value. So let's increase the weight about 0.5, and let's leave other settings as it is. Now let's select this footrest and hold your shift key and select this one, and select the sofa and press Ctrl L to bring up the link option, and let's choose link materials. So this will link the materials from the sofa to the footrest. That's pretty handy. Now let's select the wooden floor, and you can see there is already a default material set to it. So you can see how many objects is sharing this same material. There is already 4 objects sharing this material. So if I change the base color, you can see it. So so if you want to create a new material, you can see this paper icon over here. So clicking this will create a fresh copy of that material. We can edit that, so that will not actually affect any other. So this is an independent copy right now. Let's change this to floor Now click this color and let's pick the floor from here, from the color palette. Let's leave all the other settings as it is. Now let's select the walls and let's create a independent copy, and let's pick the eyedropper and choose the wall colors. I think the walls are pretty great. I mean, for this portion I don't want this to be yellow, I want this to be white. So let's quickly create this into a separate object. So press tab to enter edit mode. I'm going to press Alt Z to enter the X-ray view and select this bottom faces, and press P and choose selection to create this into a separate object. Now that we have selected this into a separate object, so we need to do a little bit of adjustment. So press tab to enter into the edit mode once again, and select this vertices, and let's press G and X and hold your control key and move this in an incremental way. So this will nicely snap this into this grid. Now press 3 to enter the side view. Again, entering the, make sure that you have selected these two vertices. Press G and Y and hold your control key and snap it. Now tab into object mode. Now let's create a new material for this floor. Let's click this icon to create a copy, and let's call this white wall or just white furniture, because we will be using this material for quite some objects. So let's call this white furniture. Let's decrease the hue and let's decrease the saturation all the way down to the white, and for some reason the value is set to 2, so I'm going to change this back to 1. Yeah, all the way to 1. Just a simple plain white material. Now let's select the window, the cupboard, these wooden drawer doors, this stand, these legs, and finally the floor, and press Ctrl L and choose link materials. So this will assign the same material as the floor to all these selected objects. Now let's select this wooden drawer and the tabletop. Let's create a new material for them. Let's call this blue furniture. Let's pick the color from here. Now press Ctrl L and choose link material to share the blue material to this one. So the doorknob is also set to white, so we can change this into blue materials by linking the material from this. So everything looks good. Now let's select the carpet. Let's create a new material and let's call this carpet. And let's pick the color from here. Let's also select the mug and choose the white material for that too. I think a white color mug is good. Maybe if you want, you can change that into a different material. And let's select the mug for a second and let's create this into a new material, and let's call this coffee mug, because we are going to decrease the roughness for this one and let's make it even more shinier. So I'm going to go down for about 0.102, and let's click the specular option and let's increase the IOR level all the way to 1. So this will create a really shiny ceramic like material. You can also select these vases and select the coffee mug and press Ctrl L and choose link materials to share the ceramic kind of material. And let's select the vase and let's make this into a separate material, and let's call this flower vase, and let's pick the violet material for this one. And for these guys, I mean, let's create a different material for all these three. So this will be a slight green, a bit of desaturated green, if I may. Let's also decrease the value a little bit, you know. Let's select these. Let's call this vase 2. Let's select this and let's call this vase 3. Now let's make this one as a slight pastel blue, and let's select this one, and let's make this one as a light pastel orange, something like that. Okay, looking good. Now let's select the photo frame. Let's create a new material. Let's call this photo frames, and let's pick the material from here. Now, this plus icon, this will allow us to add a new material slot. Let's click that, and if you go down to this material drop down, you can browse different material from that. And if I click this, it will bring all the materials that we have created so far. And let's type in white walls. Press tab to enter edit mode, and press 3 to enter the face mode. Let's select this face and go on, click this white wall material over here, and let's click assign. This will assign the white material for this face only. So this is how you add a second material for a same object. Now let's do the same for these two photo frames. Let's click these two photo frames, and finally this one. Press Ctrl L and choose link materials. Now press tab to enter the edit mode. Let's select this face, and let's choose the white walls and assign. Let's do the same over here. Okay, looking good. Let's apply the photo frame material for this box also. So for this lampshade, there is a bit of a tricky material. We have to use some nodes, but nothing complex. I will explain it step by step. Let's also select this book. Let's create a new material and call this book, and let's quickly create a new material for this bookmark and some flowers. I almost missed them, so let's bookmark. Let's give it a slight bit of red. Okay, that will do it. Now let's select the flowers. I'm going to select somewhat. Yeah, you can see the hex code for this one if you want, and this will automatically apply the material for this one too, and that is because it is a linked duplicate, which means it shares the material as well as the geometry, so we don't have to apply material for this one separately. Now let's select the leaf, and let's create a new material. Let's call this leaf and give it somewhat green, not so much saturated. Let's bring down the saturation and bring down the value a little bit. That will do. Also, let's bring down the roughness a little bit. Let's do the same for the flower. Rename this to flower. Let's click this one, and let's call this pollen. Let's assign it somewhat bright orange. Now let's select the stem. Let's click the leaf, press Ctrl L, and let's link the material to this one. In case if you want, you can create a new material out of it and decrease the value or decrease the color, something like this. Now let's enter the shading menu. So we can join these areas, and let's join this one too. Let's select the lampshade. Let's create a new material. I'm going to slightly bring it up like this. Okay, now let's call this lampshade. So right now this is called principal BSDF, which contains all kind of materials and stuff, so we don't need that. Press delete key to delete the material. Press Shift A, and let's search for a translucent material, translucent BSDF, and let's press Shift A again and search for a emission. Click and drag and select this, and click and move this over here. Press Shift A, and let's search for a mix shader to mix these two shaders. Let's plug the BSDF over here, and let's plug the emission over here, and shader to surface. So right now you can see it's kind of a translucent material. So this is how the lampshade should look. This factor decides which material is going to be prominent. So currently it is set to 0.5, which means it is taking half of this material and half of this. If I decrease the factor, you can see it is completely becoming translucent. And if I increase the factor, you can see it is completely becoming emission. Decrease the factor quite a bit and increase the emission strength. So in that way, it's emulate the lampshade pretty efficiently. And let's set the emission color to something like this. That looks good. Maybe we can increase the emission a little bit more, or we can come back to this once we have introduced new lights to our scene. Now let's select the book. So we have already created a material for this one. Now let's bring in a color ramp. So right now this is a linked duplicates. So in case if I'm going to change this color, you can see each and every book has a single color, and we don't want that. So to counter that, I'm going to bring in a color ramp. Let's bring in an object info node. Let's select the random to factor, and let's pick the color and plug this to color. So as you can see, the object info node is giving random values to this color ramp, and therefore it is picking some random values between this completely dark to completely white material. So we are going to add extra 3 stops, and click this drop down and choose distribute stops evenly to spread these stops evenly across this slider. And let's pick whatever color you want for these books. I felt like the green was kind of dominating over this colors, so I just used this flip color ramp to change the position of the green, and I think it looks good now. Maybe we can slightly increase the value for this pink. It's kind of really dull. So to create the pages, and press / to enter the local space, tab into edit mode and make sure that you are in the face mode. Click and drag and select these faces. Hold your shift key and click and drag to select these faces. Now let's go to the material properties over here. Let's add a new material slot, and let's choose the white wall material for this and click assign. So this will automatically update all these materials to these books. Why? Because it is a linked duplicate. You can see, not that it is in our site, but you should know that. I think it is visible from here, from the top angle. Now I guess we have applied materials for all these objects. So let's head back to the layout mode now. So we need one thing before applying the materials. We need a backdrop. So press Shift A, go to mesh. Let's add a plane. Press S and to scale it out like this, and press G and Z to move it down. Let's stop right there. Okay, now let's create a new material for this one. Let's call this backdrop, and let's pick the material from here. So I have a backdrop material. Okay guys, that's it for this video. Let's continue the rest in the next part. Make sure to get to this point and don't skip anything. In case if you have any doubts, please leave them in the comment section down below, and I'll do my best to answer them. And if you find this tutorial useful, please like this video and subscribe to this channel for more future contents, and hit the bell icon to get notified instantly when I release them. So that will be for this video. I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye bye.